A very famous milestone in this progress was when the Hubble Space Telescope came along, and they decided to point the Hubble Space Telescope, which was the most powerful telescope ever built at the time, into a part of the galaxy, into a part and direction in space, so as to miss all of the stars in the Milky Way. Just like looking outside of our Milky Way, where there were no stars, there was nothing to see. And they waited there for about 100 hours, gathering all the photons that were arriving, and even in a tiny square where there was nothing to see, they saw this. And now every point of light on this picture is not a star anymore. Each of them is a blob, is a galaxy at least as big as ours. Some of them much bigger, some of them smaller, and just like an enormous amount of variety, right? Some of them look like they're spirals and they have some arms, some are just blobs, some have strange shapes that aren't really spirals or blobs. And really a whole new world opened up when we started to see deep space and the universe. And the first question you may ask when you see this is where did it all come from? How did we get to all this diversity of stuff that we see? What were the origins? And how can we trace the history of what it was before? And that's really what cosmology is about. Because these galaxies are so far away, it takes a very long time for the light to reach us, which is like we're looking into the past. I like to say it's like receiving a letter by post from Australia. It's taken so long to reach you that the news are not news anymore. It's been months for the letter to reach you. So you're kind of reading about the past. And it's very much the same with these galaxies. They're so far away that the events we see happening in them today when they're reaching us, they actually left a long, long time ago, billions of years ago, for the light to traverse all of this empty space and reach Earth and our telescopes. And using this trick of distance, cosmologists can do basically an archaeologist's job. They can dig deeper and deeper layers and look at what the universe looked like at different slices in the past and see what it was like at each time. And we've discovered there were lots of epochs during the history of the universe. It was not always the way it looked today. There was a specific slice in time where big blobby galaxies were blue instead, and a time where spirals didn't exist, and a time where the universe wasn't even transparent like we see today. And we've discovered all these different stages. Just like human history had stages, the universe on a larger scale did too. And that's sort of the highlights that I want to give you today, sort of the 4 big stages that the universe has gone through after the first 5 minutes. There's a specific reason that I skipped the first 5 minutes. It's because the first thing we discovered when we looked outside our galaxy is that all the other galaxies and ours are all moving away from each other quite fast. And the ones further away are moving away much faster too. So that means that back a few billion years ago, they used to be closer. And then if you wind back the clock more, they used to be even closer and even closer. And if you wind it all back to 13.7 billion years ago, it looks like they were all in one place. And that's what we call the Big Bang. Now, unfortunately, if you take all of the universe and you compress it into one point, the physics starts to get a bit strange and mysterious. And we don't really know what happens if you compress all the things in the universe that much. So the first 5 minutes are a bit more mysterious than the rest. They're not something we can test in our labs. But the good news is, after only 5 minutes, on the scale of 13.7 billion years, after only the first 5, the physics has become understandable. It does become physics that we can test and understand, and is hopefully correct. So we're much more confident in what comes after. Also, it starts to be more observable. So that's the origin of how we've traced back this history. So in addition to observations, we've also been able to enhance our theories with big supercomputers lately that can test our theories much more efficiently than just writing equations by hand. Also, they're pretty to look at. So there's going to be plenty of simulation movies in this talk. Right, so to give a very short overview of what the state is after the first 5 minutes, there's only 2 big physical laws that we need to worry about. They're going to be fighting each other throughout the entire history of the universe. There's gravity, which makes things attract. And if things are closer, they attract more, so it brings together matter. And then there is heat and radiation, which doesn't do quite the opposite. What heat does, it makes the molecules move randomly. So the hotter something is, like gas, the more randomly it wants to move. It doesn't want to listen to gravity, which is trying to pull it together. It will just fly however it pleases. It's this balance that is going to be a very important concept from the start. And then linked to this duality, there is normal matter and dark matter, the two components that we believe were there from the start. Very similar, they both react under gravity, they both attract each other and they attract themselves. The only difference is that normal matter, or baryonic matter, starts off very hot, very randomly moving, and takes a long time to cool down. While dark matter starts off cold from the start. It doesn't heat up, it doesn't cool down, it's always at a fixed temperature. It doesn't react to temperature. And so here we are, with the first 5 minutes. Matter is there, the universe is full of a mixture of these two components. And the very first stage of the universe is going to be what we call the Dark Ages. And the very first structure to be formed in those cosmic Dark Ages is going to be the cosmic web, which I have. Yeah. So this is going to be a movie of the formation of the cosmic web. At first, it's only dark matter. It starts very smooth. But every space you have even a tiny bit more matter is going to start to attract the surroundings just a bit. But over time, it's going to start to build this enormous structure where the bits that were slightly heavier become even heavier, and the bits in between form these filaments. But we have centers of attraction, filaments, and voids. And this structure started to form from as early as the universe existed. It fills everything to this day. So at the time, baryonic matter was too hot to reply to this gravity. It was filling all the space everywhere, but it was still moving too randomly to be able to get to these cores or even react in any way. It took a long time for normal matter, as the universe expanded, to become cool. So at the time, there was only this. There was nothing to see. No stars, just hot gas and the cosmic web in the background. This is a better simulation of it on a much larger scale of about the observable universe. And you can see that it's actually extremely homogeneous still. Here where it's yellow, it means there's more stuff. But this cosmic web is very, very bubbly. It's very, very smooth. It's only started to form these structures a bit at first. So I'm going to have my timeline here at the bottom running. We are in the first part, the Dark Ages, only cosmic web, nothing to see. But eventually, after much millions of years, this baryonic matter, this normal matter that was floating around, does become cool. And it will start to be pulled towards the centers of gravity. So if you're an atom of matter and you are floating around here, now you're cool enough, you're going to start falling into this bit. And all your friends from around here are all going to get to the same place. And that's where interesting things finally happen. We enter the epoch of cosmic dawn, when the first star is formed, at around this point in the first billion years. This is a cool movie of star formation. So all this gas has converged into a blob. In this movie again, where it's more yellow, it means there's more stuff. And you can see, because the gas is still hot, it's still moving really randomly. It's still very chaotic, it's flowing around like this sort of cloud. But it's just cold enough that in this bit, gravity is going to win in just one of these tiny little bits of the cloud. So now we're going to zoom in. And in some parts that were pushed together by gravity and not torn apart by the random motion, the first stars are born. And you can notice a few things. As soon as they're born, they're going to start destroying the cloud they're in. All the remaining gas gets pushed around and forms more stars. They all fly around each other. And then pretty much as soon as they form, they all run away. Some of them make these tiny disks around them, which are going to become important way later. For now, at the start of the universe, this material is very simple. It's just hydrogen, nothing much to it. But, yeah. The stars are born, they consume their cloud. And stars, as you can see, are always born in tiny groups. Some of you may be familiar with the Pleiades, which are a group of stars just like this that were formed really recently, actually. They have just about finished using up their birth cloud. And our sun too, our sun was born in a cloud of gas just like this, and it had brothers and sisters which all flew away, never to be encountered again. So this process of star formation is now underway and it will never stop. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, formed its first stars back then, and it's still making them at about one per year. On average, the Milky Way makes one new star every year, although it's not on the clock, it's usually in small groups. But back then, the first stars turned on. There's no galaxies yet. Actually, the universe is opaque by this point because of too much cooling, so to speak. The universe has become opaque. You can't see through it. Even if you were at a star back then, you couldn't see other stars. And that's when this amazing process happens, because these first stars are really powerful. And thanks to their UV and X-ray radiation, they're going to be able to fight back against the dark gas. So this is the cube, and inside the cube we have sprinkled some of these early stars. And you can see that each of them is carving bubbles around where they are, thanks to all the radiation they're putting out. They're basically supergiant stars, very hot. And through their combined effort, all the little bubbles they make are going to touch each other, and the clouds of dark gas are going to be heated up, and they're going to disappear. So here, when it's turning pink, it means the gas is particularly hot. And at the end of this process, which we call reionization, or cosmic dawn, the universe is finally transparent. It looks a bit like what we see today. You could recognize it. The stars, and you can see through the universe. So that's good. We're at a good start. The end of the Dark Ages. And cosmologists are very happy about this point, of course, because it's transparent now, so you can observe them. And fair enough, some of these early little groups of stars, as soon as the universe became transparent, started launching starlight to exactly where, much later, the Earth would be. The Earth wasn't there at the time, but the light was already aiming to where the Earth will eventually be. Which is great, because then we can actually start to take pictures of our telescopes. And enter the next phase, which is galaxy assembly. From blobs of stars to bigger blobs of stars, and all the diversity of galaxies that we see. And these are some of the earliest observations of early galaxies that we have. These are actually pictures taken by the Keck telescope or Hubble of the two most distant galaxies. They're not even galaxies at this point. They're little groups of stars, the most distant ones. And you can see they don't look anything like the galaxies we see today. They're not blobs, they're super small. They only contain 10,000-ish stars each. And they're tiny, and they're very red because they are redshifted, as some of you may know. Right. And then from these little blobs, we can start assembling bigger things like spiral galaxies. Because at the time, in that distance of the universe, all you get is blobs. And then as time progresses, you look at galaxies closer to us, you start to see them merging, all these blobs merging, and forming things more and more what we see today. This is a recent simulation of this process. So this is showing where the gas is. Each of these yellow means there's a few stars there. When it's blue, it means there's just some gas floating around. And the more yellow and red there is, the more stars there is at that point. So you start with blobs sprinkled around. You can see they've kind of preferred following the cosmic web. They've preferred forming where there was already these big filaments. But as they start attracting each other, they're going to converge to where the most mass is. And here, the galaxy will be born. At the moment, it's not spinning in any special way, but as all these filaments are bringing in more and more stars from different directions, they all merge in a big chaos of things. Now it's going to change to show us where the stars are, so just the stars, not the gas. And already, very quickly, in this mess of merging, it's already formed a disk. And after that, it keeps turning and siphoning all this gas and growing. Sometimes other small galaxies come and collide with it, and then they join in. And you get a very long history of our galaxy gathering its surroundings, both big and small. But even though the disk stayed pretty much where it was. this can also tell us why so many galaxies are spirals. If you've ever wondered why so many galaxies are spirals, if you watch this again, you'll notice at the start it's not actually spinning like a spiral. It's moving in any direction it wants, really. All these stars are going around the center in no specific direction. It's only when this guy comes through and bounces back, they get hooked together, and they start going around each other. And of course, in space, you just start going around something, there's nothing to slow you down, so you're going to keep going around each other forever. It's like if I'm trying to walk forwards, and someone's trying to walk this way, then we grab our hands. Even though we're trying to walk forwards, we end up spinning around each other. And in space, there's nothing to slow you down, so you spin around each other forever. So the rotation of galaxies is a remnant of the very first big collisions that they had when they were just about forming. So here we are in our second phase of my big epochs. In this time we can see many different types of galaxies forming, different types of spiral arms and different sizes. Our galaxy pretty much started being into place. The Milky Way had a disk around about this time. It was running through this gathering, but already had a disk pretty much. This bit has been super successful in the last 10 years, by the way. So this is the picture I showed you at the start, and these galaxies come from a simulated universe. And you can see that with this process of assembly from blocks like Lego, you can get all the variety in the picture of the left. You get spirals of different types of arms, you get round galaxies with different shapes, and you get some with strange shapes too. So all the variety and the way they interact with each other has been a great field lately. Very happy with it. Just quickly, because I'm taking too long, the third stage I will not say too much about, but our universe had a golden age of star formation, where beyond just assembling galaxies with each other, they assembled these enormous ellipticals. This is our closest supercluster, the Virgo cluster. The Milky Way is not in the cluster. We avoided this golden age, thankfully, but it did not end well, as you'll see in a bit. But these guys here, each of them are the size of 100 or even 1,000 Milky Ways each, or the biggest ones of them. It's like the capital cities of the universe, where all the stuff happened a long time ago and all very fast. Right. And the idea here is that if a bit of the cosmic web is too heavy, it's attracting too many galaxies all in one place, like 100 of them or 1,000. The collisions that they go through are really violent. So this is an example of a simple model of two galaxies colliding, and then it shows real pictures of galaxies colliding to show how they're being stripped and they're being destroyed by these collisions. Until at the end, they don't really look like spirals anymore. They've become a mess again. And that's what happened in the superclusters. All these galaxies came into one place. It was a big mess. They stopped looking like spirals and instead looked like big blobs. Now, a guiding principle in astronomy is that big things run out faster, right? Big stars explode quicker, and small stars live for long. It was the same with these guys. They only formed stars for about this much, but at the time, they were forming up to a few stars a day. So, as I said, the Milky Way makes on average 1 per year. These guys were making 1,000 per year, or a few thousand per year. They were using all their resources really quickly. And it is estimated that during this golden age, they used up collectively about half of all the star-making resources of the universe. So all the gas that could be used to make stars with, they used it up, at least half of the total. And as big things can't last, they quickly became too polluted and too hot, and it ended quite abruptly around there. And now all the elliptical galaxies we see nowadays around the Earth are all red, because only the old stars, the red stars, are left. They stopped making new stars that are blue a long time ago. So they're dead galaxies. And of course, our galaxy was not in one of these. So while this was going on, we were happily making our way, forming stars, forming planets, being far away from all this mess. And when this ended, we continued forming stars ever since. It's pretty chill living in the suburbs. I've split this up into two halves with important events. So we know our Milky Way had a disk at around there. The last time we had a major collision was roughly there, and our current spiral arms were already in place, at least at that time. And we know this by doing galactic archaeology, basically, looking in our Milky Way, which stars joined us when. Then we can trace back what joined us, which parts were new, which parts were old, kind of like mapping layers. And then after this process of formation, more stars were made, including an important one, the Sun, and the Earth, pretty much around the same time here. And very quickly after the Sun formed, life on Earth, which is something that always amazes people. Life on Earth has been around a very long time. It's been around for a quarter of the entire age of the universe. Life is not new. Life on land would be around here somewhere. But life itself is not a new development. And speaking of life, how do we make planets? I'm not sure I will speed up. First, you have to turn your primordial gas into pollution, basically. You turn your hydrogen and helium into the stuff of life, like carbon, which is mostly made in middle-sized stars, and all the heavier stuff, like iron and magnesium and silicon that we use, which is made by bigger stars when they die, which is a whole different topic entirely. But once you get this stuff, the stars die, they explode, and they send away this polluted gas into the galaxy to cool down, meet other gas, collapse again, and make a new generation of stars slightly more polluted than before. And if you remember at the start, we had the formation of stars, and one of them had a small disk around it. Well, that's something that can happen. The research on this is a lot more new. We don't exactly know how you go from a disk to making lots of planets, but we're working on it. This is one of the best movies I could find that are trying to be accurate. You've got a star in the center, and now this gas is really sticky. It's polluted by carbon and all these other things. And through time, and through instability, and through stickiness, it will eventually form little fragments and stick together until, bam, it will glue together into tiny bits of rocks that then start to curve these channels into the disk. And that's very important. You see how they're carving this channel? As soon as they're born, they start to glue all the other things together? Well, that's good, because as of 5 years ago, we started seeing them with telescopes. We have seen protoplanetary discs with gaps in them. This was the first one and the most famous. There's a star in the center, and we're imaging here where the dust and all the material is, and there is this channel here. Actually, there's two, and it really looks like something's gone there and started to carve it out. So, in a brand new part of astronomy, we're actually studying the birth of planets kind of live, which is really exciting. And this is the recap. So, sun, water, life soon after, and some very recent developments, like the Magellanic Clouds only became close to us quite recently, and life on land at the end. And the really amazing thing that we managed to map out so much of this history from where we are today. If you put it into perspective, we're here, and through how empty space is and how long it takes for light to arrive, we have pushed it back all the way there. So we're really starting to have a clear history of all the phases in between the Big Bang and us. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Which is no mean feat in a half an hour slot. We've got time for maybe 2 questions, if anyone has any burning questions from the audience. Go ahead, yeah. Feel free to shout. Just a question.
It was just a question about near the beginning when you had everything dark matter and then things started to collect. There was a lot of heat released onto, you said dark matter is cold, so there was a lot of heat released uniformly at the Big Bang, or?
Dark matter doesn't really feel temperature. It's not cold as much as not very randomly moving. So temperature is something physicists use in a different way than everyday life. It's not like you touch it and it's cold. You can't touch dark matter. It doesn't care about being touched. It can't interact with atoms in any way. It's cold because it's not moving randomly very much. So it wasn't injected by heat in that sense. It was injected by a bit of kinetic energy. And exactly why, that's the domain of the first 5 minutes.
The unknown. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you said that we could only see just before the cosmic dawn, and apparently we have this cool down. Is there any proof in the universe that that shows the cool down of matter, or dark matter starting to collect or something?
There's some. Something I completely cut from the talk because I didn't have time was the cosmic microwave background. That's actually something we can see slightly before, is this yellow line right there. And that's the first time that, well, not light escaped, but that heat escaped from the universe. That it stopped being completely like a fog and more like launching heat waves through. Although that's a lot more difficult to explain. The collection of dark matter, the best proof we have of that is in clusters. You see clusters like this one? We know that matter bends light very strongly. And when you look at like how this cluster bends the light behind it, it really looks like it's going around the center, which is hair. And you can see there's no galaxy there. It's being bent around something which is roughly hair-centered. So it looks like it's bent by some sort of matter, and we can't see it. And it's not being bent by each of them individually. It's kind of gathered in the middle of the cluster. So that's one evidence we have.
And there's one more question here at the front.
You know how you said that there's like nothing that no one knows how the planets were formed? Maybe it was dust what was collected and like put together from like other elements that are formed together from maybe dead stars or something, and all this dust is like maybe formed together to make planets, and then other dust like somewhere in the galaxy that just came into the other dust and then made bigger planets, and except from like gas giants or coming from the gas from the sun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much correct. We know they're made from dust. The problem is the physics are really complicated. Like if you have dust floating in space, once it gets about a centimeter big, it doesn't really want to stick with all a centimeter big things. Like gravity isn't really enough to force them together, they tend to bounce. And then you need like sticky physics with molecules and stuff, which is too complicated for astronomers. It's like chemistry at that point. But yeah, it's something to do with dust, for sure.
Great, thank you. If you have any more questions, please come up. We have a bit of a gap in the schedule to talk to Sarah, if you're happy to take a few more questions. If not, we're going to let you move on because we do have another talk in our planetarium at 7.